The best decision I ever made for my mental health wasn't a morning routine, a mindfulness app, or even therapy. It was deciding to take full ownership of my life. Radical responsibility. For years back, I lived in a cycle of blame. I blamed my parents for not understanding me, my circumstances for holding me back, and other people for making me feel less than enough. Every time something went wrong, I found a reason outside myself. It felt comforting to believe life was happening to me instead of because of me. But that comfort came with a hidden cost. I was giving away my power. When you blame others you might escape guilt for a moment, but you also surrender control. And that's what slowly eats away at your confidence, your peace, and your ability to grow. One day I hit a wall. Take it back. I realized that if I kept assigning blame, I'd never build the life I wanted. I was outsourcing my happiness to things I couldn't control. That realization hit hard because it forced me to see myself clearly, not as a victim, but as the common denominator in every outcome I didn't like. It was uncomfortable, even painful. But discomfort is often the door to transformation. I had to face the truth that my problems weren't special. They were symptoms of choices I'd made or avoided making. I began asking myself a simple but powerful question. What's my part in this? Every time I felt frustrated, anxious, or defeated, I turned inward first. It didn't mean blaming myself. It meant looking for where I could take action. Responsibility gave me something victimhood never could: direction. Taking responsibility doesn't mean everything is your fault. It means everything is your opportunity. Life doesn't get easier when you take ownership. It gets clearer. You start seeing patterns. You realize that the people you attract, the situations you end up in, and the results you get are reflections of what you tolerate and what you allow. When I finally accepted that, it stopped feeling unfair and started feeling empowering. I was no longer waiting for someone to save me apologize, or change. That shift freed me from resentment, because resentment is heavy. It keeps you anchored to the past. Responsibility, on the other hand, points you forward. It says, okay, this happened. Now what? That's where healing actually begins. Before that, I used to confuse venting with progress. I thought talking about my problems endlessly would fix them. I mistook self-awareness for self-improvement. But awareness without ownership is just observation. It doesn't create change. I started noticing how often I'd say things like, they made me feel, or it's not fair. Those sentences became my red flags. They signaled moments when I was handing my power away. So I replaced them with statements like, I chose this, I allowed this, or I can change this. It was awkward at first, even unnatural, because I was retraining my brain to think differently. But over time, that language reshaped my mindset. Words became responsibility, and responsibility became freedom. When you take radical responsibility, you stop reacting and start responding. There's a big difference between those two. Reacting is emotional, it's instant, defensive, and often fueled by ego. Responding is intentional, it's grounded, thoughtful, and focused on solutions. I learned that I couldn't control every situation, but I could always control my interpretation of it. That became my anchor. When something didn't go as planned, I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what can I learn from this? That single shift turned breakdowns into data points. Pain became feedback. Failure became information. Life stopped feeling like a series of random hits and started feeling like training. People often think responsibility is a burden, but it's actually the most freeing thing you can do for your mind. When you're not stuck waiting for circumstances to change, you start creating change yourself. You stop living on emotional autopilot. You make decisions based on purpose instead of reaction. I started noticing how much mental energy I used to waste trying to control others, what they thought, what they said, how they behaved. Letting go of that illusion gave me peace I'd never felt before. Because the truth is, you can't control outcomes, only inputs. Once I focused entirely on my inputs, my effort, my habits, my attitude, my mental health stabilized. Not because life got easier, but because I finally understood my role in it. Taking ownership also meant confronting uncomfortable truths about how I contributed to my own stress. I realized I often overcommitted out of guilt or fear of disappointing others. I allowed toxic people to stay in my life because I didn't set boundaries. I said yes to everything because I equated being busy with being valuable. Those were my choices, not anyone else's. When I started owning those patterns, I gained clarity. I learned that saying no isn't selfish, it's responsible. Protecting your energy is a leadership skill, not a weakness. That decision to take responsibility extended into every area of my life. My relationships, my work, my health. And every time I practiced it, I grew stronger, calmer, and more confident. What surprised me most was how responsibility changed my relationships. When you stop blaming others, you stop needing them to be perfect for you to be at peace. You communicate better because you're not trying to win, you're trying to understand. You listen differently because you're not defending yourself. You're learning. I stopped needing to prove I was right and started focusing on being effective. That shift turned conflict into collaboration. It also made me more compassionate, not less. Because once you understand how much responsibility it takes to change yourself, you stop judging others for where they are. You just lead by example. And leadership at its core, that is the ultimate expression of mental strength. I learned that responsibility isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every morning you wake up and decide, am I going to react or respond? Am I going to complain or create? Am I going to wait for things to get better or make them better? That's the real mental health workout. Choosing accountability over avoidance every single day. Some days, I still slip back into old habits. I catch myself blaming, deflecting, or overthinking. But the difference now is that I notice it. And awareness without guilt is progress. It means you're paying attention. Responsibility doesn't mean perfection. It means ownership, even when it's uncomfortable. Over time, taking radical responsibility turned into the foundation for everything else. Discipline, boundaries, growth, and peace. It gave me control over the only thing that ever truly mattered, myself. I stopped needing external validation because I built internal credibility. Take it back. I could trust myself to handle whatever came my way because I knew I was the one driving the outcome. That's the kind of confidence no affirmation or motivational quote can give you. It's earned through consistent ownership, one decision at a time. And that's why, for me, taking radical responsibility wasn't just the best decision I made for my mental health. It was the decision that made every other decision possible. For a long time, I believed that to make progress, I had to feel inspired first. I thought motivation was the fuel that made things happen, the magic switch that would light me up and push me forward. But motivation is unpredictable. It shows up when it wants to, disappears when you need it most, and often leaves you stranded halfway through a commitment. I'd start strong on a goal, then lose momentum the moment it stopped being exciting. That cycle was exhausting. I kept wondering why I couldn't stay consistent. The truth was, I was chasing a feeling instead of building a system. I wanted to feel ready before I acted, but waiting to feel ready is the fastest way to stay stuck. One day I realized that I didn't need to feel good to do good work. I just needed to do the work. That shift changed everything. I stopped treating discipline like punishment and started seeing it as self-respect. I trust discipline is simply keeping the promises you make to yourself when no one's watching. It's not glamorous or loud. It's quiet, consistent, and powerful. When I replaced motivation with discipline, my mental health improved because I stopped living in constant negotiation with myself. Every morning used to feel like a debate. Should I work out or rest, write or scroll, focus or drift? Discipline, but discipline removes the debate. You decide once, then you follow through no matter how you feel. That kind of structure doesn't trap you, it frees you. Because when your actions aren't dictated by your emotions, your emotions stop running your life. I started noticing how often my emotions lied to me. When I was tired, my brain said, you deserve a break. When I failed, it whispered, you're not cut out for this. But emotions aren't instructions, they're signals. Discipline taught me to acknowledge my feelings without obeying them. I could feel tired and still train. Feel scared and still speak. Feel unmotivated and still execute. That's where real confidence comes from, doing what you said you'd do, even when it's inconvenient. The more I practiced it, the stronger that muscle became. Discipline stopped being an active force and started becoming part of my identity. And when your identity changes, your results follow effortlessly. Most people think discipline is about control, but it's actually about freedom. It's the freedom to live life on your terms, not at the mercy of impulse. When I relied on motivation, my life was reactive. If I felt good, I performed well. If I didn't, everything fell apart. Discipline created consistency, and consistency created peace. Because chaos thrives in unpredictability, but the mind finds common structure. I realized that mental health isn't only about feeling positive, it's about feeling grounded. Discipline gives you that ground. It gives your mind fewer opportunities to spiral because you know what to do next. You've already decided. That predictability becomes an anchor when everything else feels uncertain. When I first started choosing discipline over motivation, it wasn't easy. There were days when I questioned if it was worth it. Getting up early, sticking to routines, saying no to distractions. It felt robotic. But eventually I noticed something subtle. I was starting to trust myself. Before, I'd break promises to myself constantly and then wonder why I felt insecure. Every time I said I'd do something and didn't, I chipped away at my own self-belief. But discipline rebuilds that trust, brick by brick. You start to realize that confidence isn't found. It's built through repetition. The more I followed through, the more I respected myself. And when you respect yourself, your mental health naturally strengthens because you stop seeking external validation. There's a misconception that discipline drains creativity, but for me, it did the opposite. It created space for it. When your habits are consistent, your brain doesn't waste energy on decision making. It can focus on growth and expression. Before, I'd wait for inspiration to strike before working. Now, I sit down and work until inspiration shows up. Discipline invites creativity because it removes chaos. It builds a routine where your brain feels safe enough to explore, fail, and improve. That's why the best creators, athletes, and leaders all value structure. They understand that creativity without consistency is chaos. Once I accepted that, my work became more intentional, and my anxiety decreased because I wasn't living at the mercy of uncertainty anymore. Another thing I learned is that discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. There were days I missed workouts, lost focus, or slipped back into old habits. In the past, I'd spiral into guilt, thinking I'd failed. But discipline taught me to get back up faster. It's not about never falling. It's about shortening the time between falling and rising. That's mental resilience. When you stop expecting perfection, you stop weaponizing mistakes against yourself. I began to see every setback as a data point, not a definition. Each time I recommitted instead of quitting, I strengthened my self-trust even more. And that quiet confidence, that belief that you'll show up no matter what, became the most stabilizing force in my life. People often ask how to stay disciplined when life gets hard. The truth is, that's when it matters most. Discipline isn't for when things are easy. It's for when everything feels heavy. Those are the moments when showing up for yourself counts double. On hard days, discipline is a form of self-compassion. It's telling yourself, I care enough about my future to act, even when I don't feel like it. That kind of commitment builds emotional toughness. It teaches you that you're capable of doing hard things. And that belief reduces anxiety because you stop fearing discomfort. You stop running from challenge and start meeting it head. The irony is, the more disciplined you become, the less you suffer mentally because you've trained your brain to act with intention instead of reaction. I also realized that discipline doesn't mean ignoring your emotions. It means leading them. You can't control whether you feel tired, stressed, or insecure, but you can decide what those feelings mean. You can let them guide you toward excuses or toward growth. Discipline is choosing growth. It's the moment you decide that your goals deserve consistency more than your feelings deserve comfort. And over time, that choice reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who trees and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That identity shift is powerful because it redefines your relationship with yourself. It tells your brain, hey, I follow through, and your actions start aligning with that belief automatically. The more disciplined I became, the quieter my mind grew. That constant internal chatter, the doubts, the what ifs, procrastination began to fade because when you know what needs to be done and you just do it, there's no space for overthinking. Action silences anxiety. Every completed task became evidence that I could trust myself. And the more evidence I gathered, the calmer I felt. My mental health improved not because life became easier, but because I stopped negotiating with my emotions. I started leading them instead. That's when I realized discipline isn't just about achievement. It's about peace. It's about knowing that no matter how you feel, you're capable of doing what needs to be done. For a long time, I surrounded myself with people who made me feel good, not people who made me better. I confused support with validation. Anytime I felt insecure or unsure, I would go to people who would tell me exactly what I wanted to hear. You're doing great. Don't worry about it. You're right. They're wrong. It was comforting, but it was also keeping me stuck. I was feeding my ego instead of feeding my growth. The truth is, take it back. The people who always agree with you aren't helping you. They're protecting your comfort zone. And your comfort zone is where potential goes to die. It took me years to realize that real support doesn't always sound like praise. Sometimes it sounds like challenge. Sometimes it sounds like someone saying, you can do better, when you really don't want to hear it. When I started taking my goals seriously, I had to take my environment seriously too. I began noticing how the energy of people around me directly affected my mindset. If I spent time with people who complained, I started complaining. If I spent time with people who blamed others, I started doing the same. You don't just mirror the people you spend time with, you become them. That realization hit me hard because it meant my environment wasn't neutral. It was shaping me every day. I had to ask myself, are the people around me holding me accountable or holding me back? That question was uncomfortable because it forced me to evaluate relationships I had outgrown. But growth requires honesty, and honesty sometimes costs you company. I learned that peace often begins where people pleasing ends. At first, creating distance felt selfish. I didn't want to lose people I cared about even if they weren't good for my growth. But then I realized that protecting your peace isn't about rejecting others. It's about respecting yourself. I stopped looking for people who made me feel right and started looking for people who made me face reality. Truth tellers are rare because honesty is expensive. It costs comfort, approval, and sometimes relationships. But nothing builds mental strength like being surrounded by people who challenge your excuses. They don't sugarcoat your shortcomings. They hold up a mirror and make you look. That's uncomfortable. But it's also transformational because you can't improve what you won't confront. And sometimes you need someone else to help you see it. The people who love you most aren't the ones who protect your ego. They're the ones who protect your potential. I started noticing that the best people in my life were the ones who gave me feedback, not flattery. They'd tell me when I was being inconsistent, when I was making excuses, or when I was playing small. At first, it stung. My ego hated it. But over time, I realized that every piece of feedback was a gift. It was data. It helped me see blind spots I couldn't recognize on my own. It made me sharper. The more I leaned into those uncomfortable conversations, the stronger I became mentally. Because when you stop being afraid of the truth, you start using it as a tool, and that's when growth becomes unstoppable. It also changed how I communicated with others. I used to avoid hard conversations because I didn't want to create tension. I wanted everyone to like me, so I'd sugarcoat my opinions or stay silent to keep the peace. But silence is not peace, it's avoidance. When you hold back the truth to protect someone's feelings, you rob them of growth. And when you surround yourself with people who do the same, you all stay stagnant together. I started practicing direct communication, the kind that's kind but clear. Back. I learned to say things like, I care about you and that's why I'm saying this. That kind of honesty deepens trust, even when it's uncomfortable. It creates relationships built on respect, not pretense. Back. That's the kind of connection that strengthens your mental foundation instead of draining it. As I grew, my circle got smaller, but it got stronger. I stopped chasing popularity and started curating proximity. Back, I wanted to be around people who had what I wanted. Discipline, integrity, clarity, not just people who were fun or familiar. Back. That shift transformed my mental health because I was no longer surrounded by drama or negativity. Instead, I was surrounded by people who called me higher. We challenged each other, supported each other back, and held each other accountable. That kind of environment doesn't just improve your performance, it stabilizes your mind. Because when you're around people who operate with purpose, you stop second guessing your own. Their energy reinforces your standards instead of lowering them. And soon, excellence stops feeling like effort. It starts feeling normal. I also learned that being around truth tellers requires humility. Back. You can't ask for honest feedback and then get defensive when you receive it. Growth demands emotional maturity. You have to separate who you are from what you do. Back, and understand that being criticized doesn't mean being attacked. Early on, I used to take every piece of feedback personally, like it was a reflection of my worth. But with time, back, I learned that feedback is just information. It's neutral until you assign it meaning. If you treat it as judgment, it hurts. If you treat it as data, it helps. The difference lies in how you receive it. Back. Once I stopped taking things personally, my mental resilience skyrocketed. I no longer feared criticism because I saw it as a sign that I was still learning, still improving. Choosing truth. Tellers over cheerleaders doesn't mean cutting everyone off. It means creating balance. You still need people who believe in you, but you also need people who challenge you. That the combination of encouragement and accountability is what builds real strength. Too much comfort breeds complacency. Too much criticism breeds insecurity. You need both pressure and support to grow in a healthy way. Back. The people who truly love you will know when to push and when to uplift. And when you find those people, you hold on to them because they're rare. They help you evolve without losing yourself. They keep you grounded in truth, but motivated by possibility. That kind of balance is essential for mental health because it keeps your ego in check and your vision in focus. Eventually, I realized that curating your circle isn't about control. It's about alignment. You attract what you tolerate. If you surround yourself with people who gossip, you'll end up gossiping back. If you surround yourself with people who grow, you'll start growing too. It's not about judgment. It's about environment. Just like plants need the right soil to thrive, humans need the right atmosphere to grow. When you're in the wrong environment, even the best intentions wither. But when you're in the right one, you flourish effortlessly. The energy around you either nourishes or depletes your mental state back. So I became intentional about who I allowed access to my mind. Because your circle is either your biggest asset or your biggest liability. And for me, it became the foundation of peace and progress back. The more I lived this way, the easier it became to spot the difference between people who cared about me and people who cared about keeping me comfortable. It backed the truth. Tellers stood out immediately. They weren't loud or negative, just honest and grounded. They didn't compete with me. They collaborated. They didn't feed my excuses. They reminded me of my standards. Back. Being around them taught me that growth and comfort can't coexist. Every breakthrough I've had came after a moment of truth I didn't want to hear. And every moment of truth came from someone brave enough to tell me. Back. Surrounding myself with truth tellers didn't just strengthen my relationships. It strengthened my mindset. It reminded me that honesty is love, accountability is respect, and clarity is freedom. For a long time back, I equated success with achievement. I thought that if I just worked harder, earned more, and built bigger things, I'd finally feel fulfilled. I believed peace was a reward that came after success. It back. But when I finally reached many of the goals I used to dream about, I realized something unsettling. I still didn't feel complete. I was proud, yes, but I wasn't at peace. Every milestone gave me a momentary high followed by a quiet emptiness. I started wondering if I was climbing the wrong mountain. The pressure to always do more, achieve more, take it back, and prove more became a silent kind of stress. It wasn't burnout, it was disconnection. I was succeeding on paper, but losing alignment internally, and that realization shook me more than any failure ever did. Back. I had to confront a difficult truth. I was chasing external validation under the disguise of ambition. I was addicted to productivity because it made me feel valuable. But every goal I achieved bought me a few moments of approval, then the emptiness returned. It was a loop of temporary satisfaction and constant striving. My mental health began to crumble under the weight of my own expectations. I'd tell myself that I'd rest once I made it, but that finish line kept moving. I realized I wasn't working toward success. It back. I was running from stillness because stillness forces you to face yourself, and that's where the real work begins. I had to learn that peace isn't the absence of ambition, it's the alignment of it. When what you do and who you are finally matched, success feels different. It feels whole. That awareness forced me to redefine what winning meant. I started asking myself not just what am I achieving, but At what cost? Was I building a life I wanted to live, or just one that looked impressive from the outside? That question became my compass. I began stripping away goals that came from ego rather than purpose. I realized that much of what I was chasing wasn't even mine. It was borrowed from comparison. Social media, culture, other people's definitions of success. They had quietly shaped mine. And that realization was humbling, because when you spend your life chasing someone else's dream, even winning feels like losing. I decided that my version of success had to include peace, joy, and presence, not just performance. So I started redefining my metrics. Instead of asking, how much did I accomplish? I began asking, how much peace did I protect? That single shift changed the way I approached everything. I still worked hard, but I stopped glorifying exhaustion. I learned that rest isn't a reward, it's a responsibility. The more rested I was, the more focused I became. The more focused I became, the more intentional my work felt. I stopped saying yes to everything and started saying yes only to what aligned. That alignment felt like clarity, and clarity felt like peace. It wasn't about doing less, it was about doing what mattered most. And that gave my mental health space to breathe again. There was a time I believed that to be strong, I had to carry everything. I wore my stress like a badge of honor. I thought resilience meant endurance. But trust and resilience isn't about holding everything together. It's about knowing what to let go of. I realized that I didn't have to prove my worth through constant struggle. My worth wasn't tied to my productivity or my performance. That shift was liberating because it meant I didn't have to chase validation anymore. I could work from fulfillment instead of for it. When your identity no longer depends on achievement, you experience a peace that doesn't fluctuate with your results. It's steady, grounded, and self-sustaining. That's the kind of success that feels light instead of heavy. As I grew more self-aware, I began to notice that peace isn't something you find. It's something you choose. You choose it in how you schedule your day, who you spend time with, and what you say yes to. You choose it in the way you talk to yourself when you fail and how you define what failure even means. I started creating boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as guardrails to keep myself aligned. Protecting my peace became part of my discipline. It meant saying no without guilt and slowing down without shame. And every time I chose peace over pressure, I realized how much of my stress had been self-created. I was finally learning to manage my mind, not just my calendar. Part of that journey involved accepting that slowing down doesn't mean falling behind. We live in a culture that equates business with importance. But being busy isn't the same as being effective. I used to think the more I did, the more valuable I was. Now I understand that my value isn't measured by output. It's measured by presence. The best version of me isn't the one who accomplishes the most, but the one who is most connected to herself. When I operate from peace, I perform better, think clearer, and lead stronger. Because clarity thrives in stillness, not chaos. Once I stopped racing the clock and started respecting my pace, I found that peace didn't slow me down, it sharpened me. There were still moments when my old habits tried to resurface. That voice that whispered, you're falling behind, or you're not doing enough. But instead of fighting it, I learned to question it. Who says? I'd ask myself, who am I trying to impress? Those moments of reflection became checkpoints. They reminded me that the goal isn't to silence ambition. It's to align it. You can be driven and peaceful at the same time. You can pursue excellence without self-destruction. I started focusing on depth instead of speed, impact instead of attention. And ironically, when I stopped chasing success so desperately, I became more successful. Because I wasn't chasing anymore. I was creating from a place of calm power. Over time, I realized that peace and progress aren't opposites. They're partners. When your inner world is steady, your outer world becomes stronger. You make better decisions, build healthier relationships, and recover faster from setbacks. Success without peace is noise. Success with peace is music. That's the difference between performing and living. When your definition of success includes peace, you stop competing and start connecting. You stop proving and start becoming. That shift makes you unstoppable. Not because you're the loudest, but because you're the calmest in the room. Peace isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's knowing that you can handle anything without losing yourself in the process. Redefining success to include peace didn't make me less ambitious. It made me more intentional. I still want to win but I want to win differently. I want to win with clarity, with balance, with joy. Because success without fulfillment isn't success. It's just exhaustion in disguise. The best decision I ever made for my mental health was realizing that peace is not the opposite of achievement. It's the foundation of it. Everything I build now, my work, my relationships, my routines, is anchored in that truth. I stopped chasing what looks good and started building what feels right. And that's the kind of success that lasts, the kind that doesn't just look impressive to the world, but feels authentic to your soul. Because true success isn't about having more. It's about being more present, more grounded, more at peace.